You're watching Access Minnesota. Here's Jim Dubois.
The University of Minnesota is the largest public university in the state, and its enrollment is among the largest in the Big Ten. But even with a massive student body, the U is challenged to attract more students from diverse backgrounds. Access talked with the U's Assistant Vice President for the Office of Equity and Diversity about efforts to recruit a more diverse student population. Rickey Hall is the Assistant Vice President of the Office of Equity and Diversity at the University of Minnesota. Vice President Hall, welcome to Access Minnesota.
Thank you, Jim.
First of all, can you give us a brief overview of what the Office of Equity and Diversity does at the university?
We have 7 units, and we work to advance equity and diversity throughout the Twin Cities campus, but also we work with our colleagues on the other campuses as well.
What are the major incentives for an academic institution like the University of Minnesota to establish diversity on campus?
Well, we see it as a social and economic imperative. But also, one of the things that we realize that we have to prepare all of our students to work effectively across difference. And one way to learn those skills and how to do it is to have diverse students on campus. And so we see it as a benefit for all of our students. We certainly see it as, again, like I said, an economic imperative, and that certainly if the state is going to be strong, if the nation is going to be strong, we have to do a better job when it comes to diversity.
How diverse is the student population currently at the University of Minnesota?
Currently, it depends on how you define diversity, and certainly certain populations we can't accurately track because there's no way to know, for example, how many students with disabilities that we have, because there are students with invisible disabilities as well as visible, but students don't always, they figure out how to navigate and negotiate classrooms and the campus, and so they might not be registered with our Disability Services Office. But we know that we have those students on campus. And then also the same thing with our GLBTA population, our gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender students. Some of those students aren't out necessarily, and so there's no way to, adequately track those students. But in terms of students of color, if that's what you're talking about, we have about, I think it's 19% of our student body is currently students of color.
Is the university satisfied with the level of diversity on campus at this point?
We're not. We know that we can be doing better. Again, like I said, I think when you look at shifting demographics, we know that we have to be better with, in particular, our populations of color. And certainly, we see that there are huge benefits to having diverse populations on campus.
The Supreme Court has allowed race to be a factor in admissions to a university, but it prohibits quotas to be set. How does the University of Minnesota set goals to encourage more diversity and more students of color without setting quotas?
Well, we don't, as you said, we don't set quotas, but you certainly could have goals or targets, but we don't set quotas. And so we strive. We know, for example, we talked about the student body being roughly 19%. We want to increase that. We're looking at students not just for the racial contributions that they will make and bring to the campus, but also students, even in those populations, there's diversity in those populations, and they bring a wealth of assets, a lot of different beliefs and traditions and so forth that really make the campus life much more meaningful and rich. So we don't set quotas. While we don't set quotas, we do look at where we're at. That's a baseline for us, and we want to improve on that. And so hopefully each year we will see some increases.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that minority students face on campus?
Again, it depends on students, and it's all individual. Because for some students, they're first generation students, and so this is the first time that anybody in their immediate family has gone to college. So they don't have that history that some other students come with. There's nobody at home to really talk to them about the things to expect, the types of things that they're going to encounter, the resources that they need to seek out. And so that's why we make sure that we have certain academic support and personal support services on campus for students. Also, a sense of isolation for some of these students. They're coming here, and depending on the high school that they've been at or the communities that sometimes they're used to seeing many more folks that look like them, and now you come here, you might be the only one in a classroom, or you might be one of a few, and so that can be daunting. You might even feel that whole spotlight, and so I think things like that, but also that pressure to sometimes give up parts of who you are, or at least suppress some of those parts in order to be accepted or to fit in, and there's a cost to that. Sometimes students come here, and again, being one of a few, they might not have that sense of connectedness or really feel a strong sense of community here on campus. So we work really hard to make sure that students are getting connected, because we know that that's a real key to retention. And then one last thing that I'll add, Jim, and certainly is always the financing of your education, the financial piece. That's always often a big challenge for many of our populations, our diverse populations.
How do you think the university can increase the minority student population going forward?
One of the things that we have begun to do, and we need to do a bit more of, is certainly starting to work with youth and their families a lot earlier. We, through our Multicultural Center, we have this program called Kids on Campus, where we bring it's K through 8 youth to campus, and most of the youth that come through that program are youth who could be first-generation students, are from low-income families, are students of color, and they come to campus and they spend time here. The person who coordinates that does a wonderful job. He does this presentation called College is Cool, getting them interested and introducing them to college early and the benefits and thinking about it. They get familiar with the campus. Sometimes they get to meet the president, which could be a highlight. And on most of the visits, they get to eat in the residence hall. And so we're really trying to introduce the college life to them. We have them meet with current students, and they talk about their challenges, their backgrounds, the places that they've come from, which is similar to some of these students. These youth start to get really excited about the possibility of being here. One other thing that we've done, and we need to continue to do, and we can do more, is we work with some of the school districts on their parent engagement programs, and a number of them have these parent engagement programs now, where parents, and primarily parents who they haven't gone to college themselves, so their youth would be first-generation students, where they go through like a 6-week program, and they learn about college. They learn about what they need to be doing now to help their son or daughter prepare for college, the questions they need to be asking. They go talk about financial aid. So how do you finance college education? And there are a number of things that they go through, great programs. And then the last week they come on to the University of Minnesota campus. And so they get a tour, plus folks here talk about the college experience, and then the next piece around admissions, and kind of walk them through those processes, which is really important when you think about it, if these are folks who have not gone to college themselves. And so it kind of demystifies that whole piece. And I think we need to do a bit more of that. And so we're actively engaged, but we're always looking to be better, and we will be better.
Rickey Hall is the Assistant Vice President for the Office of Equity and Diversity at the University of Minnesota. Vice President Hall, thank you so much for joining us on Access Minnesota.
Thank you, Jim.
That's all for this month's edition of Access Minnesota. Please join us again next month as we look back at the colorful and black and white history of Minnesota television. Thanks for watching.
Access Minnesota. Issues that matter to you. Join us again next week as we bring you the newsmakers and stories that shape our everyday lives. Access Minnesota is produced by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association in cooperation with the University of Minnesota's College of Liberal Arts.